Good morning, scumbags. And if it's not morning, I apologize. That was presumptuous of me. I'm Andrew Fantasia, and this is.
Rob McDonald.
What's up, Rob McDonald?
Oh, not too much, Andrew Fantasia. How are you?
I could be worse. I mean, everybody always could be worse. We are in the Senate today. It is vote of no confidence time, and we are voting on a
Confident.
little. Yeah, we're voting, first of all, unconfidently, on a little issue regarding a certain Mr. Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yes, indeed. And more specifically, he's got the unique thing of having two actors that played him so well, Alec Guinness and, of course, James Arnold Taylor. No, I'm kidding. It is, of course, Ewan McGregor, and it's who is better? Which actor portrayed him better?
That's right. And my vote is for Mr. Ewan McGregor.
And I am, of course, with Alec Guinness, the OG.
And it's a quick side act bar. I got this novel for my birthday. It's this fantasy novel called Dreams and Shadows, and the main character is named Ewan because his parents, their first date was going to see Train Spotting. So
Oh, okay.
pretty serendipitous when, like, I just started reading it like 2 nights ago. So it was pretty serendipitous when James told me that my side of the coin had landed on Ewan McGregor. So I thought, perfect. Let's do this.
That's a really weird movie to go out on a first date to. Train spotting?
Hey, honey, you want to watch a guy go through withdrawal?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so why
Putting
don't you start
heroin into his veins.
uh, start us off with the OG? Tell us a little bit about Alec Guinness and why you think he's better.
All right. So, firstly, I'm just going to start off with the fact that Star Wars was, he was putting this entire project together, and it was such a small project, smaller budget for what, like, you'd expect it to be, and especially compared to like Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and the fact, he got unknowns in terms of Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Harrison Ford, who was pretty much unknown at that point, going into doing A New Hope. And he brought in Alec Guinness. Alec Guinness, who really brought the gravitas, and he brought the uh the force in it. Like, he got an Oscar winning actor to portray his fatherly figure in this movie in Obi-Wan Kenobi. He brought, like I just said, gravitas to the role. He brought so much like vigor and so much like, where it's like, oh my god, they got Alec Guinness for this weird space movie, and it's like, is this going to be good, or is it not going to be good? But the fact that they got Alec Guinness, who would won, I think, for Bridge Under the River Kwai, and just being known for this amazing actor, they brought him in, and he really took that role and just brought it into its own in that same movie. So that's where I got to start off. Just the fact that they got Alec Guinness to play Obi-Wan Kenobi in the very first Star Wars movie is just astounding compared to what all the other actors that they got in this movie.
Well, I've always been of the mind that the best characters are, like, no matter how iconic they are, the best characters are the ones, like, the ones that we remember are the ones who we watch grow. And, like, that's why I mean, I love Disney. I love Mickey Mouse. But Mickey Mouse, as iconic as he is, isn't a great character because we never really see him grow. He never, like, does stuff. He's just like, and that's it. Um, in terms of Obi-Wan Kenobi, when we meet Alec Guinness, he's great. He's iconic. He's cool. He leaves an impression. But the Obi-Wan we meet in episode 4 has all his shit figured out already. So that when he dies, it's just like, oh, well, he's there, and he's this perfect Jedi, and he knows what everything to do. He knows the right thing to do, and then he dies. Whereas with Ewan McGregor, all of a sudden, here's this guy, and he's an open book. He's learning. He's just a plethora of vulnerabilities comes through, and that could have been disastrous. I mean, going back after meeting this wise old Merlin kind of figure, and then going back and seeing him grow from like a young teen to, however old he was by episode 3, that could have been a disaster because it could have gone totally against the grain of what Obi-Wan is supposed to be. It could have moved him into a spot where people would have said, "Oh, that's not how Obi-Wan should be. That's not my Obi-Wan. This shit ain't canon no more." And I think on top of that, you have the, infamous prequel dialogue, the infamous prequel air about it, which as much as I love the prequels, that air is there and it's not going anywhere. In the hands of a lesser actor, we would have been left with something that was kind of a steaming mess. But instead, we got Ewan frickin' McGregor. We got the guy from Trainspotting. And he took this role in this trilogy of cheese, for lack of a better word. Great cheese, but cheese. He took this role and he ran with it. And he gave us vulnerable Obi-Wan. He gave us all these sides we never saw before. And then at the end of the day, what does almost every prequel hater stop and agree with is that, hey, you know what? As much as I hated Gungans and Geonosis and whatever, that guy who played Obi-Wan, he wasn't bad. He was the best part of the movie for me. So along comes this guy with the unenviable task of taking a 30-year-old character and making it fresh and making it new and making us believe that he is the same guy Alec Guinness was, and he knocks it out of the park. And at that point, that's when you have to step back and say, okay, Obi-Wan, Alec Guinness Obi-Wan, lit the fire in the torch, but Ewan McGregor brought that torch into a room and illuminated all the dark corners.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, obviously the fact that you could say that Ewan McGregor is a very big bright spot in those prequels is a real testament to, I guess, Ewan McGregor. And I'm not going to say that Ewan McGregor is bad as Obi-Wan at all. He's pretty damn good in the role. But there's a reason why what you just said was that he had to live up to Alec Guinness because Alec Guinness was so good, because he enveloped that role so much. Because the fact is that in that movie, in A New Hope, you had Alec Guinness who had to basically tell you about the Force. Like in a time where it's 1977, they couldn't just show you the Force like they did in the prequels, right? They didn't have the technology to do that. They didn't have the budget to do that, and you basically had to listen to Alec Guinness just talk about the Force, within you, and doing the speeches to Luke and giving all that knowledge in such a great way in terms of just making you almost feel the Force, feel what was going on. Like that's why Ewan McGregor was able to kind of get off of in the prequels altogether, got off of the action almost more than the actions and the feeling of the movies as much as the original movies did. Meanwhile, he had to do it. He had to bring everything from his performance because you saw him trying to poke Darth Vader with his little pokey lightsaber, and it's not exactly a big highlight of a lightsaber battle. But they were able to focus more on that stuff. Alec Guinness was literally, he was Obi-Wan, and you felt Obi-Wan around him pretty much. Like he developed as to who exactly Obi-Wan is, and of course, yeah, he's not going to have the character development because he's an older gentleman, right? Like how much you hear so many times that this person's 60 years old or 70 years old, they're not going to change now. No, yeah, because they developed into the person that they're going to be. Andrew, you and I are probably going to be the same. We're not going to develop between 65 to 70, between those times, right? We're already who we are. So yeah.
More raves when I'm in my 70s.
Raves, yeah. Hopefully that's just a big thing in the future altogether. Just raves all the time. Maybe even ones from Blade, where it's just the blood raves, and you're just taking But regardless, yeah, that's what I got to focus on. Just the fact that you felt the aura of Obi-Wan around Alec Guinness all the time. Ewan McGregor had to win you over, and he got to rely on some of the action a little bit more than Alec Guinness obviously could have.
Well, here's the thing. I'm going to say something that might make me a bit unpopular, but that's okay. I'm not popular to begin with. Here's the thing about Alec Guinness, and I don't want to come across like I'm shitting on the man because he's a terrific actor. He's awesome, and Obi-Wan is one of my favorite characters ever, and that's partially because of Guinness. But the thing is, when you look back at Alec Guinness's attitude during the process of making these movies, and you hear him speak in interviews and everything, it was this constant air he had of looking down his nose at what he was making. Like whenever you hear him speak about it, it's always, it never comes from a place of respect. And I feel with Ewan McGregor, that does exist. He does respect, like he knows that those prequels movies that he made were not the best made movies or the best directed films. He knows that, but he respects Star Wars in and of itself and what it means to people. Uh, Ewan McGregor would constantly, like I have some like magazines of interviews with him where he would constantly say things like, George wrote this script with all these rubbish words of some space nonsense, and I just went forth and did the best I could with such atrocious concepts. And it's just like
I was wondering when the impression would come into this at some point. I knew it was going to happen.
He had that aura about him of, and being an actor myself, I've met a lot of people like this too. He had that aura of, is just like, if it's not Shakespeare, it's garbage. And and I mean, you have so many of these classically trained actors who they'll just jerk off Shakespeare till the cows come home. But the second you present them with something else, this is like a great example, like the movie of The Avengers. The first Avengers was fantastic. It was an amazing movie. If you tell one of these classically trained actors, you're like, wow, would you like to be in this movie that I just wrote about, like these superheroes, whatever? They would turn their nose up at it and be like, oh, what's this rubbish with Iron Man and aliens? This is preposterous. And it's a shame because they're so narrow-minded in that way. And like you even look at like some of the later work of Orson Welles, and like you could tell. Luckily, this never came across with Alec Guinness because he was a much more skilled actor. But with some of these classically trained folks, when they're doing something that they don't care for, it shows in their performance. Thankfully, we didn't get that with old Obi-Wan, but it's a shame because you hear these interviews, and you hear Guinness, who is essentially like our idol as a kid. I mean, like this wise old man who teaches us, and you hear him talk about the Force and call it rubbish and be like, George wrote this preposterous script and I didn't understand. It's so disheartening as a fan. And even in episode 6, when you see old Anakin, Sebastian Shaw, that was Alec Guinness's friend, and Guinness kind of hooked him up with the role and told him like, hey, we need an actor for this small part in Return of the Jedi. And it was the same kind of thing, like with Shaw, when they interviewed him, he was just like, oh, I don't know what this is, some sort of space movie or something. I don't know. It's like they're so like I said, if it's not Shakespeare, it's garbage as far as they're concerned. And that's a terrible shame. And thankfully with Ewan McGregor, that never came across. And I mean, you look at Ewan McGregor, he's not like the stereotypical like little dorky guy who loves stormtroopers and such. He's not like us. He's like this cool, like rockin', cigarette smoking dude. And when you see him talk about Star Wars in interviews, like he comes alive. Like there is love there. I mean, I've seen so many instances where he's just talking about it, even now, years down the road, and he's just like, I love the chance that I got to play Kenobi, and I love what it did for me and what I got to bring to the character and what the fans reacted to it. Like you can tell when he speaks, he loves the fact that he got to play Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he was brave enough to embrace everything about Star Wars, the good and bad. And I don't think we got that with Guinness, even though Guinness wasn't like, he was not just in one movie. Remember, he was in all 3 of the originals, and still, after 3 movies, we never got the sense that he embraced what it was. We just got the sense that he did it because he knew he was the powerhouse actor. And again, I don't want to shit on the man. I mean, I think he did a great job, and I love old Ben, but when that happens, it's disconcerting. It takes you out of the moment. It takes you out of the illusion that the actor is supposed to maintain.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, if we're talking about the people in terms of the way they are, I think it's a lot of telling of like the times that they were in altogether. Because like nowadays, like, we're about at a time where it's like almost like the nerds are taking over the world, right? We're going to Comic Cons with hundreds of thousands of people when like, at that time, I don't even know if the first Comic Con was like going on at that time with like where it took place in like a hotel with like 100 people or something like that. I think it might have been around that time because I remember hearing the stories of certain people when it would be like that, where it's like, again, it was just this little tiny niche thing. Now it's just a part of like everybody's culture. Like, in the 90s, it would be like preposterous to think of like a jock being like a huge like comic book fan, really. And
Yeah.
that's the 90s. That's not even the 70s. Um, and you were talking about like Orson Welles, and like yeah, like obviously yeah, he had a lot of like stuff behind the scenes that was about it, very finicky things about him. Marlon Brando, one of like the greatest actors of all time in my opinion. Like he was synonymous with being like difficult to work with during his movies. Like Gene Hackman, even too. Like he gives directors a hard time, and the fact that that's beautiful with Alec Guinness was that yeah, even though like so many actors around that time didn't care for like this type of like genre movies and genre stuff all that much because again, like you were saying, they're actors, they're classically trained actors. Um, the fact was that even though he didn't care for this movie behind the scenes, you were still able to. He went on screen and he played this character, no matter what he thought about it, to the fullest of his ability. So much so that we're talking about this time where it's like they don't care about this type of stuff, but people forget he's the only actor from Star Wars that has ever been nominated for an Academy Award. He was nominated for A New Hope for playing Obi-Wan Kenobi, best supporting actor. That's amazing. The fact that he could do that in that time, especially to be like,
Mhm.
hey, this is sci-fi. This is something that the Oscars might in a lot of ways like frown upon, but it's still like Alec Guinness. He was amazing in it. They recognized him for this role because of how good he was and how much he embodied Obi-Wan Kenobi. Regardless of the time, it was yeah, you like you were saying with Orson Welles, like you could almost see some of the times where he would seem like he was having a nervous breakdown because of the stuff that he was involved with. But Alec Guinness, you never got that. I never found him phoning in a single scene in that original trilogy. It always seemed like, even though he doesn't seem to embrace this culture as much as Ewan McGregor does, and as much as a lot of people do, like when it comes to comic book movies, when it comes to Star Wars movies, like, even Star Trek movies in a lot of ways, they just embrace their characters and embrace the geek culture. This they didn't do that, but still he gave it his all. He put everything he had in that performance, and again, the only actor from Star Wars to ever be nominated for an acting Oscar, which is pretty astounding. And on top of that, his last name is a beer, an awesome beer. I'm gonna go have a Guinness right now. No.
Well, if I have one final point, it is that again, as great as Guinness's performance was, and it was great, I will stand by that. He found a a box of what Obi-Wan was, and he stayed in there. And what he gave us from that box was great material. But what I love even more about Ewan McGregor was there was no box. There was just layers of this human being. And I wrote down here because there were so many, like Guinness gave us the wise old man cliche, and he gave it 100%, and he did it well. But then I take a look at what Ewan McGregor did, and I was like, okay, we got a brash Padawan, we got a gruff master, we got a concerned older brother figure, we got like the joking best friend, we got like a guy with a good sense of humor who could make wisecracks, we got a detective, and we got a general. And this was all one actor. This was all one dude who did this. And to top it all off, he did something that is so true to life that I do, that I notice other people doing, which is he took the fact where he's like, okay, Qui Gon, Qui Gon Jinn, and Anakin Skywalker are two men who have been such an important part of this guy's life. I mean, Obi Wan Kenobi's life was like half of it was Qui Gon, the other half was Anakin. And what I love so much about what Ewan did was there are moments in 2 and 3 when you can actually see Obi-Wan being like Anakin, and there are moments you can actually see him being like Qui-Gon. And it's such a cool, subtle little piece of humanity because who are we but imitators of what we know and what has influenced us. I mean, so many people, you see them as like they do things exactly how their parents would do it, or they do things exactly how their best friend or their brother or sister would do it. And that is such a subtle, cool little choice that you don't expect from a Star Wars film. Uh, but then along comes Ewan McGregor, and he's doing these things, and they're so subtle, but they are there. There are moments where you see Qui-Gon Jinn come out of Ewan McGregor's mouth, and there are moments where you see Hayden Christensen come out of Ewan McGregor's mouth, and it is when you see it happen, you're just like, this guy gets it. This guy understands Obi-Wan and his relationships and how they have molded him into who he is. And that to me spells like somebody who, like, that man knows what he's doing. That is an actor who knows what he's doing. And I am so much more excited now to see him play old Obi-Wan again. Hopefully, please, because of that. Because he's going to bring something to old Obi-Wan that Guinness wasn't able to bring, which is this baggage, these people, this life. And I can't wait to see that take shape.
Well, yeah, so there we go. It's a heck of a debate, I think, that we had on our hands here because it is you literally got Alec Guinness and you got Ewan McGregor, two of like big highlights for this Obi-Wan character, and it's just a question now of what do you guys think? What do the fans think? Who do you like better between the two options? Because I mean, for me, like even like I'm like myself, I'm right in the middle. I'm not sure which one's better, but there's definitely pros and cons for each side. So that's the beautiful thing about this debate.
Yeah. So let us know, folks. What do you vote for? Do you vote Ewan? Do you vote Alec? Do you vote James Arnold Taylor? Because he's pretty damn cool too. Let us know, and we will see you next time on Vote of No Confidence.
Hey scumbags, thanks for watching. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up on our video. As always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rebel Scum Podcast, for all the latest videos.